I grew up as a Jehovah's Witness, spent the first 40 years of my life in it, actually, born in, as they say. And today I want to talk about the psychological blender that your brain is put through when you're in that organization. You ready? Let's get into it. First off, I want to be super clear about two things. I am not a psychologist, and this is not medical or mental health advice. It's only my observations from looking back over the 40 years of being in the religion. Second, I believe the average witness is a decent person trying their best to do what they believe is right. There are, of course, exceptions to that. We all knew them. But for the most part, they're basically good people in a bad religion. And this isn't about attacking individuals in the religion. It's about looking at the system itself, how it affects people, often without them even realizing it. So I grew up in a bubble. From literally my earliest memories, I was taught that there's the truth, and that's what we call being a witness. And then there's the world, which is everyone and everything else. It's like growing up with an invisible fence around your entire life. You can see the other kids playing in their yards, but you can't join them because you got a shot caller on that'll zap the hell out of you if you go too far in their direction. Your entire identity gets wrapped up in being a witness. I remember being 5 years old, standing on doorsteps with my little suit and the Watchtower magazine, trying to get people to read about Armageddon when they probably just wanted to enjoy their Saturday morning coffee. And here's the thing. When your entire identity is built around an organization before you've even figured out who you are or really how to read, it's like building a house on someone else's foundation. You never got to pour your own concrete. You know what I'm saying? That's not just a religious issue. That's a serious developmental thing. Then there was the ultimate threat, disfellowshipping, now called removed. It's the cult artist formerly known as disfellowshipping. That's their form of excommunication, and it comes with mandatory shunning. Not, we'd prefer a few limited contact. I mean, full on walk past you in the grocery store and pretend you're invisible shunning. Beth and I laughed our butts off after leaving the religion when we saw a sister in the grocery store literally run away from us. Yeah, it's like that. Beth hasn't spoken a word to her family in over 7 years. They have not even called to check to see if she survived the hurricanes that have swept through North Carolina over the years. Evil, right? Yeah. I watched it happen to my best friend years ago. One day, he was like a brother to me. The next day, couldn't even say hello to him. Like you can say hi now. Why? Because he had some doubts about the teachings and voiced them to the elders. That's it. I was a good little cult soldier. Did what I thought was right at the time, only to call him and implore his forgiveness when I finally woke up too. Scientists who study the brain have found that social rejection activates the same brain regions as physical pain. Being cut off from everyone you love isn't just emotionally painful, it's almost physically painful. Your brain processes it like an injury. So imagine you're born into this organization. Everyone you've ever known or loved is in it because you're not supposed to have close friends outside. They're a bad association, you know. And you start having some questions or doubt. What do? Risk losing literally everyone, your whole social fabric? Or just keep those doubts to yourself and play along? It's like being held hostage, but the ransom is your authentic self. That's not faith. That's captivity. Then we got the information lockdown as witnesses. When I was growing up, we weren't supposed to read anything critical of the truth. They called it apostate literature, Babylon the Grey, worldly wisdom. There are lots of slurs for that. And it's basically treated like spiritual poison. One whiff of it and your faith would melt like ice cream on a hot sidewalk. I remember being so afraid of this mysterious, dangerous information that I would literally leave the room if someone started criticizing the witnesses on TV. Just straight up get up and walk out. Imagine being that afraid of information. Truth does not fear scrutiny. So if your religion fears scrutiny, they ain't got the truth. It's like they handed us all these mental filters. Everything had to go through the Watchtower filter first. Is that movie okay? Is this music okay? Is this person okay to hang out with? Every single thing in life had to be processed through the Watchtower filter. Elders were just as quick to reference Watchtower articles as they were the Bible. What does that tell you? The Watchtower and its publications were like legal precedent that lawyers would refer to when trying to establish the law. The Elder's Handbook, Shepherd the Flock of God, has more words in it than the 5 books of the Pentateuch, which includes the entire Mosaic Law. And here's the kicker. Critical thinking skills are like muscles. If you don't use them, they atrophy. By my late 30s, I realized I had these weak, wimpy critical thinking skills because I'd outsourced all my serious thinking to a bunch of old men in New York, at least when it came to religion. And that's where it gets really interesting, because I consider myself a pretty intelligent guy. And yet when it came to religion, although I would speculate on things, I only considered truth what was told to me by the Watchtower, even though it constantly changed. Now, that has nothing to do with intelligence. When you're born into a high control group, a cult, your whole worldview is built on that belief system. It's an emotional attachment, not an intellectual one. Everyone you know is in the religion. All your hopes and dreams are bound up in them being right about everything. To accept that it's all a lie is incredibly difficult psychologically, but it's what you have to do to get out and get your freedom back. Oh, then there's the perpetual Armageddon watch. From my earliest memories, the end was just around the corner. Every natural disaster, every war, every new UN resolution was another sign of the times. I literally grew up believing I would never graduate high school before Armageddon came. Now I'm 48. I spent another 20 some odd years in the truth waiting for the end. That does something to your psyche, living in a perpetual state of emergency like that. It's like having your car alarm never stop going off. Eventually, you're living with this constant background anxiety, but you've gotten so used to it that you don't even recognize it as anxiety anymore. It's just normal. I was counseled not to pursue higher education because the end is so close. Many of my friends didn't save for retirement for the same reason. Now they're in the late 40s, early 50s, some in their 60s, no retirement funds. And the organization just shrugs it off and says, well, the end is closer now than ever. That's not faith. That's a pyramid scheme because the payout is always in the future. If you have a future, the blood transfusion prohibition, that's a whole nother level of stress. I carried that no blood card from the time I was a teenager. Every doctor's appointment came with a side of anxiety. What if something goes wrong? What if I need blood? Will I be strong enough to refuse it? My dad had to deal with that when he had back surgery. It was a real problem. There are numerous accounts of Jehovah's Witnesses, including children, who died refusing blood. We called them martyrs. We praised their faith. Now look back and just feel profound sadness. Think about the psychological weight of that doctrine for a second. Imagine going in for routine surgery and having to worry not just about the normal surgical risk, but also about whether you might face a situation where your religion tells you to reject a life-saving treatment. It's like going swimming with a weight tied to your ankle. You might be fine, but that extra danger is always there, always adding stress. Look, let me be clear. I'm not telling people what medical procedures they should or shouldn't use. I'm just saying that every individual should be free to decide for themselves. And we absolutely were not free to do that. Accepting a blood transfusion was considered disassociating, leaving the religion of your own choosing, which, of course, gets you shot. Now let's talk about the spiritual performance treadmill, the hamster wheel. In the witness world, your spiritual worth was tied to visible activities. When I was growing up, how many hours of door-to-door preaching you did, how many publications you placed, your Bible studies, how many comments you're making at the meetings, were you giving talks, were you preparing for the meetings, were you making progress in your Bible studies, were you studying with your kids, on and on and on and on. I spent 40 years on that treadmill. No matter how much I did, never enough. Good for nothing slave, they used to misapply Jesus' words from the gospel. What you have done is what you ought to have done. Pioneering back then, 90 hours a month. Great, but brother so-and-so is pioneering and serving as an elder. Special pioneers clocked 120 hours a month when I was growing up as a full-time job. Vacation? No matter. Get to all the meetings to get out in service anyway. If the end is near, there's no real time for R&R. Go to the beach and enjoy the nice Mai Tai? That's not spiritual behavior. Not that you couldn't do those things, but you were never supposed to neglect the more important things, which was just whatever Watchtower wanted you to do. There was always stuff that benefited them, their bottom line, their numbers, their converts. It was never about you and what you needed. They made it sound like it was for your spiritual well-being or whatever, but it was all about whatever was good for Watchtower. It's like being on a hamster wheel that's rigged to always go just a little faster than you can run. You're constantly exalted and somehow feel guilty for being tired. I remember sitting in my car outside someone's house, dreading the door-to-door work, but logging the time anyway just to keep my numbers up. That's not spiritual growth. That's a corporate productivity metric masquerading as faith. Then there was the thought police. Yeah, the one inside your head. Probably the most invasive aspect of being a witness was being taught to police your own thoughts. Any doubts? Dangerous thinking. Questions about doctrine? Dangerous thinking. Finding the logic in a teaching questionable? Dangerous thinking. You become your own thought police. I would literally catch myself having a doubting thought and then feel guilty for the thought itself. I hadn't done anything wrong, just for thinking something that didn't align with what the organization taught was true. It's like having a mental malware program installed in your head that monitors your thoughts and sends off alarm bells when you think the wrong thing. That's not spirituality. That's psychological programming. But I found my way out. Leaving at 40 was the hardest thing I'd ever done up to that point in life. Lost all the friends I've had, some since childhood. Family relationships were strained, or in best case, completely broken. I had to rebuild my entire social network from scratch. Try making new friends at 40 when you've never, ever, ever had worldly friends before. It's like trying to learn to swim as an adult. Technically possible, but awkward and terrifying. But I've also found freedom. Freedom to ask questions, freedom to explore ideas, freedom to make mistakes without fearing divine punishment or organizational repercussions. If you're a former witness watching this, know that it gets better. The panic attacks, the nightmares, the moments of crushing guilt, all that stuff fades with time. The cobwebs of the mind do clear up eventually. Find a good therapist who understands religious trauma. Connect with other people who've been through it. Go to meetups, that kind of thing. You're not crazy, you're not evil, and you're definitely not alone. If you're still in and secretly watching apostate videos like this one, I see. I was you. Whatever you decide to do, know that you deserve happiness and authentic connection, not conditional love based on organizational compliance. Couple of final thoughts. For those with families still in, patience is the key. Remember, 40 years I was in. Confrontation, arguments, that doesn't work. Love them unconditionally, unlike the way they feel about you. Show them that there's good outside the organization. To current witnesses who might somehow see this, I genuinely respect your right to your beliefs. I know many of you are sincere, good-hearted people just trying your best to do what's right. My criticism isn't of you, but of the system that you're in that actually hurts the people it claims to save. I still have my own faith, and just not one controlled by an organization. Turns out your spiritual journey doesn't have to come with a corporate middleman. Thanks for listening to all my rambling thoughts on this. If I've said anything that resonates with your experience or helps you understand someone in your life a little better, then putting myself out here like that, totally worth it. Don't forget to like this video, subscribe to my channel, and leave your comments below. Take care, and I'll see you in the next video.